Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to come out to the Incorporated Masterbuilders Association of Jamaica's seminar on construction, scheduling, performance, and claims. We do apologize for the late start, but however, we will seek to proceed post this. I would just like to especially welcome our students. I am duly heartened by their attendance here, and we just ask if we can at least show them some appreciation for them coming out. It is truly an encouragement to see the interest in the construction sector by the younger generations, and hopefully in another 30 years or so, it will be you guys up here taking charge of this thing. So we especially welcome you from heart, from the technical schools and the high schools. We wish to welcome also our industry professionals and all those who participate in making the industry what it is, whether you are at the regulatory level, in government, whether you are a design professional or a building professional or a supplier. Indeed, it is all who work together to make this thing happen. And at this point, we will ask the president of the IMAJ, Mr. Humphrey Taylor, to give us the president's remarks. Can we just welcome the president, please?
Good morning to you all. And I am so happy to see you out there, especially the students, because as you notice, we are getting gray hairs, so you have to carry on later on. We put these seminars on each year as part of our continuing education program. So I'm exhorting you to make full use of it so that we can effect the transfer of technology to our building and construction practitioners. It is, I know, time out of your busy schedule, but we never stop learning, so anything new that we can garner to help our professional life is good for us. The younger ones, of course, they still have to go through their colleges and universities, but all our professionals, it will help for their continuing education. We hope that this seminar will aid the construction practitioners in developing more professional approach to the business of construction, and you can move your company, business in line with what the global market trend is nowadays. Your support for this event is most welcome, and we anticipate a rewarding experience as we seek to improve practices in the construction industry. One last thing before I do sit down, the proceeds help us to give our scholarships to our students. This year we gave out 50 scholarships, so I'm hoping that you will get a great benefit, but it's not for naught when we do things like the scholarships we give to UTech and the Heart. So enjoy your seminar, but at least get the maximum you can get in terms of your further education. And once again, welcome and thank you.
Thank you, President Humphrey Taylor. At this point, we would just like to acknowledge our sponsors. We can't do this without partnerships. We partner with the academic institutions, with our trade professionals, with our suppliers. And we are indeed indebted to our sponsors who allow us to continue to stage continuing education exercises such as this. And we'd just like to thank JN Bank, Hardware and Lumber Limited, Carib Cement, Delta Supply, Company Limited, General Paving, Asphaltic Concrete Enterprises Limited, Paramount, trading Sunlight Windows and Doors, IMCA, CAT, the TAAD, yes, the Tax Administration, yes, they are sponsors, and they expect us to return to them what is due unto Caesar. Stewart Industrial, JPS, Nubian One Construction, WorkSafe Global, and C&D Construction and Engineering Limited. Can we just acknowledge our sponsors, please? At this point, we'll invite some remarks from our major sponsors, and we'll invite first up Mr. Sean Gooden from Hardware and Lumber.
Honorable Dr. Horace Chang, Mr. Humphrey Taylor, President of the IMAJ, other distinguished members of the head table, IMAJ fellow sponsors, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On December 9, 1927, Hardware and Lumber Limited, now popularly known as H&L, began operations and opened its first retail store at 4 King Street, Kingston. Jamaica started with a core offering of lumber in all grades and sizes, as well as being building and supplies, material supplier, main one. They satisfy the needs of the construction industry. Hardware and Lumber is a merger of several companies, which took place in 2004, consisting of Grace Kennedy's Rapid Sheffield and Agro Grace, and Panjam's H&L True Value, H&L Agro and Marine. Over its almost 90 years of existence, H&L has undergone a vast number of changes, with the most recent being in December 31, 2015, when the company was acquired by Argyle Industries, Inc. The company's core business is the retailing and wholesaling of building materials, home improvement supplies, household items, lawn and garden products, and agricultural supplies. The company has the widest distribution network in the hardware and home improvement sector in Jamaica and trades through 2 operating divisions. The first, H&L Rapid True Value, comprising of 10 retail outlets across Jamaica, offering retailing and wholesaling of building materials, home improvement supplies, and household items. And number 2, Hardware and Lumber Agro, formerly known as Agro Grace, comprising of 5 stores which offer technical solutions, retailing and wholesaling of agricultural and gardening products. Our capable team of field representatives are here to assist the commercial businesses, government entities, and research institutions by providing solutions with our competitively priced and quality products. H&L's distribution network includes its main distribution center of 67,280 square feet at 697 Spanish Town Road, which it owns, comprising of 6 distinct stock storage locations and the main H&L Agro warehouse. As a company, we recognize the value of partnerships such as the one we have established with the IMAJ. And we are very pleased to be a part of today's seminar. H&L salutes the IMAJ for its 65 years of dedicated service to one of Jamaica's leading and dynamic industries. The construction industry. On behalf of our fellow sponsors, we take this opportunity to reaffirm our commitment to working with the IMAJ and look forward to this mutually beneficial relationship. H&L is certain that we, as we continue our thrust in responding to customers' demands, primarily developers, contractors, and tradesmen, to offer competitive prices, timely deliveries, and quality products to suit their requirements. The IMAJ will provide all the relevant support. In closing, I would like to remind everyone that Hardware and Lumber is committed to creating value for its customers, partners, and employees, investors, and communities by delivering the best in-class solutions. Thank you.
my colleague sponsors, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. JN Bank welcomes the opportunity to be part of the Incorporated Masterbuilders Association Conference for a 4th consecutive year as a major sponsor. We do not take our sponsorship lightly, because for us it is an expression of a partnership with the master builders who over the decades reshaped the built environment in our urban and rural spaces and engineered our structural development as a result of the communities they designed and built. Ladies and gentlemen, we value those developments. They are important to a company such as JN Bank, which is built on the importance of identity and empowerment through home ownership, something that we have been doing for over 14 decades. You see, ladies and gentlemen, identity is our powerful knowledge concept in the process of development. And without it, there is very little we can achieve. At the same time, there are numerous ways in which we can achieve a sense of identity, such as through internalizing knowledge, history, and culture. And for others, there are the more tangible ways of affirmation through acquiring assets such as a house, a motor vehicle, and attaining quality of life which places us on par with everyone else around us. We all want equality. Master builders, therefore, play a powerful role in shaping the identity of our people through the soundness and efficacy of the infrastructure they build and the communities they design and engineer. And therefore, it becomes imperative that builders take their jobs seriously and execute them with great pride and care so that the quality of their work becomes unquestionable. At the same time, there are some inefficiencies in the sector which must be addressed if master builders continue to achieve this mandate of shaping lives and identities. In some areas, for example, project management must be improved to reduce inefficiencies. You need to carefully monitor your projects every step of the way to avoid errors, which are costly in time, material, and labor. The word overrun should not become synonymous with the work of the Jamaica Master Builders. We should get it right the first time, or quickly identify what are the likely consequences before they happen and address them so that we do not lose time and money. Because your identity, your reputation is a valuable part of what you offer. Your reputation is your capital. It also adds value to your finished product and strengthens your competitiveness. Second, we have to ensure that we are adapting the relevant technologies and new ways of doing business in the sector. Similar to other industries, we evolve and change, and we should ensure that we are using the right tools to produce the best results in the fastest possible time. It's the master builder who can deliver the best quality in the shortest time possible who gets the contracts. Also, use the technology to make the world your oyster. Jamaica is a small market with its difficulties. Therefore, get the right international certifications and use the technological tools to place you on par with the rest of the world. And you will be able to compete for contracts in other markets. There is no reason why you cannot. As your partner and friend, we at JN Bank see it as our responsibility to remind you of the urgency to address these matters so that we can move the construction sector forward by ensuring that we are competent, strong, and competitive. As a financial company for Jamaicans and leaders in the mortgage financing, JN Bank is here to support your needs so that you can strengthen your competitiveness. We offer you an advantage as Jamaica Master Builders beyond the commercial banking services that we now do. And we have the capacity to offer you development financing to finance your projects. which is grounded in strong experience and expertise, having worked in the housing and construction sector for more than 143 years. And I'm here this morning in my capacity as the Chief Development Financing Officer for the Jamaica National, and to assure you, to tell you that we have the supporting team, the funds, and everything to work along with you to ensure that you remain competitive. In addition, we don't only finance your projects, but we will assist you to market your developments to attract buyers. And we have over 65,000 members throughout the diaspora, we are the largest membership organization. And when we finance your project, we also expose the finished product to the world market. And many of you have benefited from this service. Master builders, you are the master of our destiny. You are the shapers of our identity. You are the builders of our nation. I therefore urge you to address those issues which may retard your progress, so that master builders can strengthen their competitiveness and shape lives and build communities wherever they go. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Samuels. We'll now invite our third major sponsor, representative from Carib Cement, Mr. Garin Williams, sales manager.
Fellow sponsors, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is indeed a pleasure and honor for me to represent Carib Cement as a sponsor in yet another IMAJ seminar put on for the master builders in Jamaica. Mr. Chairman, before I proceed with my remarks, I would like, please allow me, to commend the current and past presidents of the Master Builders Association, the administrators, and all its members in reaching its milestone of a 65th year anniversary. This is a truly important and impressive achievement for a truly bona fide Jamaican organization. Dr. Chang, you will agree with me that evidently Jamaica has grown up with the Master Builders Association of Jamaica, and evidently the Master Builders has created and contributed significant growth, progress, and success to our blessed country, Jamaica. As the Master Builders aligns itself to tackle the challenges of the future, Carib Cement is immensely proud to be associated with the initiatives of the Master Builders Association, and one such initiative is today's seminar. Today's seminar, entitled Construction, Scheduling, Performance, Claims, resonates well with us at Carib Cement, not only as suppliers of the sector who are committed to the Master Builders' vision of improving the standards and raising performance levels within the construction sector, but because we at Carib Cement have been undertaking our own upgrading projects to improve our performance and supply to the local cement trade, and have been actively utilizing project management techniques that will be shared with you here today at this seminar. We would like to commend the Incorporated Master Builders Association of Jamaica, again, for putting on a seminar of this nature and for their continued efforts in raising the standards and improving the performance within our construction sector in Jamaica. We would like, as a preferred supplier to the cement trade and to the construction market, we would like to wish the Master Builders Association tremendous success in today's seminar and in all its future initiatives. As the supplier to your concrete producers, like fresh concrete delivered on sites across Jamaica, we want the incorporated master builders to be growing from strength to strength. Thank you.
At this point, now, would like to invite Minister, the Honorable Dr. Horace Chang. Minister Chang is also a member of Parliament and a medical doctor. He holds portfolio with responsibility for water, works, and housing in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. We now invite, can we welcome also Minister Horace Chang.
I consider a privilege to be able to join you this morning and give some opening remarks, although we have started. The construction sector is one of the most critical sectors in any economy, and in many ways signifies, in a way, what is happening in the economy at any time. Because whether it is the public-driven construction activity or the private-driven activity, it's an indication of the level of expenditure in the community. So if the country is growing, the government has more money to spend and do the required infrastructure that is required. And at the same time, when there's money going to people's pockets, they tend to build homes, business, offices, and other activity, which is why the health of the construction sector is critical to the entire economy and a reflection of what we're doing as a country. It is our view as a government that the country as a nation stands today ready to grow the economy and expand the infrastructure to the benefit of all its citizens in a way that is unprecedented. The business theoretician will say we're at a tipping point in our economy. If we miss it, we'll be in problem. If we succeed, we'll certainly transform the economy in Jamaica. It's an opportunity that underscores the need for our construction sector to be agile, knowledgeable, and streamlined. The conference, therefore, is its theme, construction, scheduling, performance, and claims, is timely and useful in our national development agenda. The administration, headed by Prime Minister Andrew Holness, has outlined plans which are repetition of what was done in many ways before in our Vision 2020 development plan, specifically for our water sector, our manufacturing sector, the services, among others, and infrastructure and development that will play a significant part in the development of these sectors. The administration takes government land available for build-out of homes as well as office space in joint venture operations. Private-public partnership we see as a critical part of what we do, and we expect and hope that more Jamaican constructors and builders will participate in these private-public partnership programs. Some of them are large to the point where you're having challenges for local participation. But on that note, as you discuss the quality of construction in terms of the theme you have laid out is critical, it's so important to begin to look at how we work together as Jamaicans so that we can bulk up some of the firms locally to be able to compete at the international level. The administration is keen to utilize provision in the public sector procurement policy to support our local construction sector so that there can be a level playing field. Not all it is. One has to bear in mind that when we take much of our international funding from either bilateral governments or from international agencies, we have to follow international procurement rules. But it is important that we also establish and play by the rules locally and ensure that there's a level playing field for our own companies, and the process allow our companies to grow. We are in the process of, well, we have approved in Parliament the procurement law. It has some aspects of which you ought to familiarize yourself with, not just the processes, but we still retain a 15% local preference in the construction sector. We have also ensured that some 20% of procurement will be retained for small and micro enterprise activity. Of course, the total government budget, as you are aware, in the capital sector is well over $100 billion. Not all of it is devoted to construction, of course, but a large percentage of it, in fact, the majority of it goes toward construction and development. And it is important that the local builders and contractors feel they can participate in a fair and equitable manner. The 15% preference is critical, and sometimes some may argue that it is a bit high, but all countries protect their local industry. Despite of the talk today of open market and the global village, which is true in many ways. We communicate with each other in the world today, whether you're in Japan or London or Jamaica or South America, with ease, at the touch of a button, whether you're in touch with each other and the genuine village. But it is also true that every country takes steps to protect their local business. Despite the World Trade Organization regulations, oftentimes hit upon us. And the fact that we are part of, we are struggling still, despite of our announced policies. When you have to work within the framework of the International Monetary Fund, it puts you in a little bit of a tighter framework. That's just a fact of life. We have to work with the international rules, and we should work by rules. But in those situations, you still find that governments take steps to provide that. And we have to discuss that. We, as I said, have now articulated our procurement process as a law. Oftentimes we complain about regulation, and when we need to take steps to improve them, many of us don't read and take time to appreciate and understand the implications until we reach them and we get to court. But governments set rules, and in many ways, we allow the system, we seek to bypass the system, both from the government level and at the local level. The procurement process in Jamaica was up until recently, regulations, and gave some, you live by regulation, but it was not governed by the kind of legal framework that that held you totally accountable by law. The new law puts that in place, and of course gives the Office of the National Contracts Commission and the Office of the Contractor General now fully activated a certain level of responsibility and the capacity to prosecute and hold people accountable. We are hoping that, of course, will ensure that not only there will be fair participation, but allows the companies to begin to do the kind of collaborative work to build their bulk in the construction sector that will allow you to participate at any level in the region to start with. Because by putting this in law, it means that everybody has to abide by it, including those who are coming in. But it will give you greater flexibility and opportunity to be part of the regional construction industry. The building law, which you have commented on, on the Ministry of Local Government, is in Parliament, and we expect that to be ready before the end of the parliamentary year. These are aspects of government policy which have a wide impact on the industry, and my hope is that these will help to strengthen and build the industry, not to impair. Of course, to further assist the enterprise in the sector, the Development Bank of Jamaica has been made into a lending agency, which allows them, on lending, they provide a certain level of guarantee to loans so that the risk to the banks, like now Jamaica National, which is no longer a mutual company, in sex now a full bank, but they can continue to lend to small investors and feel less risk. And in fact, we anticipate that with that regulation, some $6 billion will become more easily available to small and medium enterprises, which means small contractors, small business personnel who are providing service to the industry, etc., can begin to think more positively about growing the business and making yourself one of the more dynamic companies around. There is no question that there is a positive correlation between construction and economic growth. As a nation focused on growth while still having fiscal responsibility and accountability, the improvement in the quality of life of all Jamaicans, the construction and engineering industry is critical and has been brought in sharp focus. The government itself wished to introduce policy, and we examined them how to expand our engineering capacity. Because while we have over the years spoken very glibly of growing the economy, making sure we can increase prosperity and wealth, one of the basic factors, and I'm a physician, so I don't have any bias in all of this, and by choice. that if we are going to build an economy, a strong, sustainable economy, in which Jamaicans will no longer be totally dependent on others doing us favors, literally, by using us when they want and when they don't want, as is, or the biblical saying, we remain heroes of wood and carriers of water for life. We have to build our engineering capacity to ensure we can build industries with quality value added and, in fact, begin to participate as partners in the international economy. So the government is very keen and will introduce policies to expand our engineering capacity across the board, and of course that means all engineering skills. This country cannot maintain sustainable growth at a rate that will bring wealth and a better quality of life to our people unless we can expand our engineering capacity. It is idle talk otherwise. And of course, the construction sector is maybe one of the most critical sectors in terms of its needs for. If we expand it, we have to have the Jamaican engineers to so do, not only to engage in the capital development, but to maintain the infrastructure we build. But that's maybe our biggest weakness today. We like to build things because as politicians who set policy, it's always nice to go either break ground or cut ribbon. But then 6 months after that, the road fall apart or the building is in decay, and so they steal out all the windows and doors, et cetera, and things fall apart. That is a reflection of lack of development and maturity in our society. We have to have a society that builds industry, office space, services, and move them, scale them upwards, maintain them, and go on and remain an efficient part of an expanding world economy that changes very rapidly in today's world. Some of the young members I see here certainly don't have an idea what the first cell phone looked like, which is not so long ago. I'm sure if I showed them a cell phone, what it was, they maybe laugh at me and ask, what the hell is that I'm carrying around the place, right? And that was, not so long ago for most of us in here. So the world changes rapidly, and therefore we need people, professionals with the skill to adapt, to initiate some of those changes. And that goes across all technical fields, but in many ways, the engineering field is particularly critical to not only adapting to change, but initiating change. So scheduling, of course, and collaboration is critical. Scheduling not only for you as a contractor building to ensure efficiency, but of course in government. So we find that today we dig up roads to build them, and tomorrow we dig them out to put pipes. And the next year we build them out to put in the sewer pipes. And before you know it, we have a road that is no good. We are trying to overcome that. Much of the work being done currently by road construction, a major infrastructure program, we put in pipelines. Sometimes we don't connect them as early as we should, but they're there already. And we put in the sewer lines. That's part of what we do in Kingston as we seek to bring about improvement in the traffic flow. At the major sensitive centers, with work on Mandela Highway, Constant Spring Road, Hagley Park Road, and Spanish Town Road. So you'll see work right on where we're putting in simultaneously pipelines for both sewer collector systems and water lines. Although we don't have much of a sewer collector system in the western section of the carpet here, we are looking at how quickly we can bring it on stream, but we're going to lay the line so we don't have to go back and dig up these major highways in a year or two time. So we could say much more on the issues, because there are many issues affecting the sector. I tried to really outline to you some of the policies we're trying to do to ensure that we will create an efficient legal framework. We want to indicate the government's thinking that we see the sector as crucial. We have issues still outstanding, but we are not ignoring them. We want to expand the engineering cohort of the country to ensure that our development can be maintained on a growth trajectory and really generate the kind of quality of life we all look forward to. We have to coordinate our development, that we don't have one conflict with the other. These are issues that the country has faced for many years. We are seeking to overcome them. It won't be done overnight, but if we work together, I'm sure we can lay the foundation and move forward in an efficient framework. A seminar, therefore, to engage in discussion around proper scheduling, performance, and claims in a rapidly changing Jamaican business environment is welcome and encouraged. On that note, I want to congratulate the Incorporated Masterbuilders Association of Jamaica on hosting of this, an event I look forward to seeing continue on an annualized basis as they lay the foundation for discussion, exchange of ideas, and better practices, to include the associated industries, the banking, the suppliers of material from cement to the bolts and nuts that go into everything in construction, and to begin to examine what is happening what is the way forward in all sectors of the industry. Construction not only employs thousands of people, as one of the former Prime Minister would say to me, it's the only industry in which a man may walk with a prison with no qualification, walk on a site and get a job. It made it point that it employs everyone who wants to work. Can employ, let's say it employ everyone, it can employ everyone. A professional engineer is a highly skilled individual, can go anywhere in the world, work. They not only build, they create, they initiate activity. On the other hand, a man can, with his two hands, participate in the industry.
Can we now welcome Mr. Omar Sweeney?
Distinguished members of the platform, distinguished members of the audience, good morning. And Chairman, I was noticing that the room reminds me of church, right? Everybody seems to be afraid of the front seats. But, you know, I like construction seminars because we in the construction industry, we're not boring, and we're not, you know, serious like. I mean, if you attend any site meetings, you realize that fireworks are the norm. And so I hope we see some fireworks in here today, because I take the opportunity also to commend the Incorporated Masterbuilders Association. And to give you context, I will tell you that I worked in the United States for close to 10 years for probably a top 10 engineering contractor in the country. And while I worked in that industry, I could not find an entity that was structured such as the Master Builders that was really focused on the protection and the development of the industry. So right here in Jamaica, what I've experienced with the Master Builders over the years is really an entity that has sought to protect and build and sustain the industry for the benefit of all. And so to see that that has been happening for 65 years, I also ask you to join hands in really commending that. The construction industry here in Jamaica has been one that, like the minister had said, really is an essential industry to our country. It's essential for employment, it's essential for the overall development. And at JC, for instance, where we execute hundreds of contracts annually, the business that we're here to talk about this morning, which is performance, claims, and scheduling, is something that is so essential to what we have to do every day. In my own, I'm a pragmatic person, and I look at contracts from the point of view of simply saying, you work and I pay and you work. And anytime I stop paying or anytime you stop working, well, everything cascades from that. And the presenters we have this morning are experts in the field.
Distinguished colleagues in the audience, students, again, we are very pleased to have you. And as pointed out earlier, you will be taking over from us sometime. I think a little less than 30 years, Len, but hopefully we'll see you soon, whether you're members of the association or in other areas in the industry. As you notice, I had to call and help this morning because the document was prepared by Mr. Ross, John Ross. He's the attorney who prepared this document. And he became ill sometime late last week and called me and asked me to try to read his paper for him. I'm going to do that, but I feel somewhat like a substitution being made when the best player in the team got injured, and you know have to go on there and try to make good for his absence. But with the assistance of Mrs. Larissa Smith here, I will attempt to do so. I'm going to put up his document on the screen and then take you through some practical aspects of the contract. He has prepared a discussion on the CIC standard form of contract. He went back to the old name of the organization, which was the JIC, which was the joint. It was they make joint. No, that is for it was the JCC, correct? Yes. It is now the Construction Industry Council, the CIC form of contract. Be aware that there are other forms of contract that are used. The CIC also produces a short form of contract for small contracts. The main contract used for infrastructure work, and I need to make the distinction here also, that this form of contract is mainly a building form of contract. So you will encounter later on the words architect and the contract administrator in it. The FIDIC form of contract is the form that we normally use for infrastructure works. Some institutions here, particularly I know the NHT, National Housing Trust, uses the FIDIC for all of their work. But his discussion here is on the CIC standard form. He then goes in to describe and elaborate on almost all the items, all the clauses in the conditions of contract. And I will try to pick up where, if you go back to clause 1, go back up to clause 1. He starts with this one, and usually the contractors who are experienced tend not to pay attention and read in detail the clauses because they know. However, clause 1 defines the contractor's obligation. I must also point out that he wanted to present, because this is a Masterbuilders, he wanted to present the contract from a contractor's perspective. And although he's a lawyer, he's well qualified to do so. He has been in development and project management, importantly. And if you go back many years, you will find that the word or the definition contract administrator did not exist until maybe somewhere in the late 70s, early 80s, when the professional called a project manager became entrenched in the industry. And to some extent, that project manager would operate as a contract administrator, either in tandem with or in lieu of the architect. Okay, in terms of clause 1, he expects you to understand what your obligations are. He also refers you to clause 21 that says you must proceed diligently with the work. He also makes reference to site minutes, which we will come to in clause 2. You are expected to, as I said earlier, produce a program of work. And among the things that are important, again, is that you institute a site diary and you record in the diary all the events of that day, not necessarily in long form, but certainly noting. The weather is important because there are times when you may have to request extension of time because you've had abnormal rainfall or some other climatic event that would have disabled you from working on that day. You're also encouraged to ensure you produce your progress reports because these may come in handy later on, either when you do your normal processing of where you are, what events have caused you to not be on schedule, and therefore what can you justifiably present to support requests for extension of time. It is always important that these be done because it makes a good contract administration, and he was at pains to point those out. Clause 2 goes into the architect's instructions, and for those who don't know, because there are those here who know, these are either instructions that have been communicated already in the drawings, but he may from time to time modify those instructions either verbally at site meetings or in writing. It is required that if he issues a verbal instruction, that the contractor confirms this within 7 days of the instruction. Again, it is very important, and he points it out, because memories are not what they ought to be, and sometimes people forget those instructions. Clause 3 goes into the contract documents themselves. Again, they encompass all the documents that are presented at the time of tender normally, and it would be good if you ensured that in presenting your program, that program be read within and with those documents, because later on they could be, it could be a problem for you. Clause 6 deals with your materials, goods, and workmanship. I don't think we need to elaborate much on this. You're expected to use the best quality material, and the workmanship must be exhibited to ensure that accuracy and the quality at the end of the works are clearly visible. As pointed out earlier in an earlier discussion, if you're inaccurate, it costs money. It was put that it would result in additional time, materials, and labor. Money was what was left out. It cost money. So good materials, good workmanship. He then takes you through clause 7, 8, 9, and 10 together. He says they speak for themselves, and they somewhat reiterate what the architect may have said to you. I'm just referring to them now to see what their headings are in case that is of any help to you. Or some of these deal with royalties. Or one is important, contractor's supervision. Clause 8 speaks to contractor's supervision. Of course, the quality of your site management is going to ensure the quality, the good quality is going to ensure the good quality of your performance. Then 9 speaks to access to the architect and contract administrator, which means your ability to communicate there properly. 10 speaks to a clerk of works. On large projects, you may have a resident architect, a resident engineer, or a clerk of works. This is somebody who is appointed, who is employed really by the employer, usually through the architect's firm or the engineer's firm. And they see to the day-to-day activities on the site to ensure, in particular, that the drawings and specifications are being adhered to. And then he went on to, he speaks to you also now about clause 11, which has to do with variations. Speaks all to provisional sums and the price PC sum. Those who we spoke earlier, if the architect comes and changes the scope of the work or the nature of the work, that constitutes a variation. Variations can also be omissions of items of the works. These omissions could lead to claims from the contractor for loss of profit, depending on the nature and the size of the omissions. So those have to be paid attention to. Provisional sums are included at the start, and usually the quantity surveyor, or in the case of engineering works, the engineer estimates the value of an item of work that is to be done and includes it. The architect then, architect in this case, or engineer in the infrastructure case, then instructs the work to be done against the value of the work. The PC sum is a value that is put in for the cost of a particular material, or it could be equipment or some similar. And it is, again, an estimate, and it may actually be increased or reduced based on what the actual costing works out to be. He then moves on to, I just quickly went over. All right, he moved on to clause 15, but you had 12 dealt with the contract bills, which are the bills of quantities that you would have had at tender stage. It also, 13 is the contract sum. It sets out the amount that's in the contract. 14, materials and goods unfixed or off-site. Materials and goods unfixed or off-site are often taken into account and paid for in advance in a certificate. This is up to the discretion of both the employer and the architect normally. They may not accept that value unless it is on site. Okay, he moved on to clause 15, which defines practical completion. And it is important that the first subclause be noted, because it is the clause that really says, in essence, that practical completion is achieved when the facility, the building, the structure can be used for the purpose for which it was designed. And you may actually have partial practical completion on some sections, or it is more traditionally referred to as sectional completion, where the owner may want to use portions of the building before the full building is completed, and it can be done. It won't interfere with the rest of the work, and he will accept partial practical completion. It is also, I think, does he go on to 16 there? Could you go up for me, please? Because partial possession is also available, and it falls into the same aspect. Of course, there are conditions under which those are done, and those are agreed by all parties, the contractor and the architect, usually on behalf of the employer. Clause, he goes on to, 16. Okay, we dealt with 16. 17 deals with the assignment or subletting of contract. Normally, some assignment or subletting of contracts are allowed. It is not normal that the total contract is allowed to be assigned. Assigned meaning engaging another contractor to undertake the works, or subletting portions of the contract. But there are conditions under which this is done. It has to have, the employer essentially has to agree to it, and is usually the person who initiates it, because it isn't normal that the contractor can just come and ask to have the contract assigned or sublet, because he was awarded the contract on the basis that he would be able to undertake the contract in total. So it would normally involve the employer, who may wish a friend or somebody else to participate on the job. And if the contractor doesn't regard it as disabling to him, he could agree to it. Clause 18, injuries to persons and properties. These are usually allowed against. First of all, and this is a point we make strongly at Masterbuilders, the safety aspect of construction sites, very, very important. We actually produce a safety manual, which we encourage all contractors, members and non-members, to acquire and hand out to their workers and have discussions with them and actually put up signage and so on the sites to ensure that every effort is made to make the sites as safe as possible. Clause 18 speaks to injuries and how we remedy those on site. And then 19 goes on to ensuring against such injuries. 20 goes on and ensures against what we call contractors' all risk. So that's all risk. Risks that are potentially known and risks that are unknown. Force majeure risks, wherein you could end up with something happening that is totally out of your control. But there are risks also that are within yours. However, those are all insurable and are insured. Again, we spoke about possession. The contractor is given possession of the site completely at the start of the work. If for any reason the contract is postponed, there is some provision that you can enter into dialogue as to whether or not you continue to maintain possession or you hand over possession either during the time, and this would be an agreement on which the financial arrangements would be made, because there would be costs incurred in maintaining possession of a site on which the work has been suspended. There are damages. Clause 22 provides for damages for non-completion of the contract, and this is quite clear. We on our side have argued for years that if you are prepared to have damages for non-completion, you should be able to have bonuses for early completion. But of course, that is never palatable to the other side. Extension of time, I'm sure you would have gone into it in great detail, and this is important. And what Mr. Ross did also, he made references to legal cases that have been settled and have now become settled construction law. And he was able to point out where, from time to time, these clauses have been adhered to one way or the other and have been brought up in arbitrations in particular, more so than court cases, but oftentimes an arbitration ends up in court also at the end of the day because there's objection to the award. Loss and expense, clause 24, deals with items, whether through the instruction, late instructions, late information, non-availability of PC items, or we go back to the prime cost items, PC items. In a number of cases, the employer, through the architect, chooses to supply materials to the contract or equipment, and oftentimes might be late in the supply of these materials. The contractor then experiences delays, and delays have cost to them. And so loss and expense is an item that is looked at very carefully by all parties, because it's additional cost to the owner and it's monies that the contractor has to recover in order to maintain a viable contract performance. Clause 25 goes on to determination by the employer, determination or termination of the contract. There are strict rules as to how this comes about. There are warnings that have to be issued about non-performance, non-material performance, breaches of the contract. And the contractor has to be given the opportunity to correct breaches resulting from non-performance of the contract, and he has to be given reasonable time. He's then notified. If he continues in breach, the owner can then determine or terminate the contract, at which time various other issues come into play. I've seen where the employer has employed the same contractor to finish the job. And this has come about because when the contract is determined, the bond, the performance bond, is called on by the employer. The bonding company has the right to analyze the contract, assess its position, because it's in the hole for a 10% payment. And I've seen where the bonding company has assessed the contract, has determined that it will cost them less than 10% to complete the contract, maintain the same contractor, or employ another contractor in other cases, and have successfully completed the contract, to the point where when final accounting is done, after all of that exercise, the original contractor did in fact have a payment to collect. So those things can happen in the execution of contract, but 25 gives the owner the ability to end the contract if the contractor is not performing. 26 now gives you the contractor's right to determine particularly if he's not paid. And a similar process takes place where proper notice has to be given about non-payment and its effect. And if in time it continues, the contractor has the right to determine the contract. Having done so, an accounting again has to be done to see where the various issues are and how much money is outstanding to the contractor. As you can imagine, these events usually end up with often end up with some other type of dispute resolution process taking place. But those are provisions that are available within the contract. Clause 27 treats with nominated subcontractors. These are people who are nominated to undertake specialist portions of the work which the main contractor doesn't usually undertake directly. And they are nominated by the employer through the architect, normally. And their performance has to be monitored by the contractor. The contractor has to ensure that these contractors perform properly. However, as you can imagine, because they are nominated, if they don't perform, then the owner is at risk because they were appointed by the owner, even though by the architect. Nominated suppliers, clause 28, very similar. Suppliers can be nominated to supply specific materials or equipment to a job. Again, this may have been included as a prime cost sum before, a PC sum, in which case, again, the delivery of the material has to be within the time scheduled by the contractor. And if it falls out of time, significantly out of time, then the owner, the employer, becomes liable. Clause 29, he may not have mentioned, he does, artists and tradesmen. These, again, are specialist people who may be engaged by the employer on the contract. They have to perform within the time frame set out for them to avoid delay to the main contractor. Clause 30 goes into great detail on certificates and payment, goes into how it is produced, what is required. The quantitative is very important here. I recall a number of architects insisting that they do not certify the money, they certify the work. However, it requires the architect's signature before the contractor gets paid. But the contract speaks elaborately to that, and Mr. Ross has treated it in some detail as well, so that, again, if you avail yourself of his presentation, you will see the notes that he has there. Fluctuations speak to changes in the cost of materials, equipment, anything that goes into the construction of the job within the contract. Contractors are known to submit a book of materials and equipment that they are to provide for the contract, all the way down to nails and screws. And every month they put together their invoices. And this is how it is done. You have to claim, if you allow fluctuations to just run over time, you may end up with a problem with it being certified, even when it ought to be, ends up in a dispute and so on. So I would advise that on a monthly basis, contractors take out all their invoices for purchases, check those that have cost them more than the basic prices that they had submitted. Or that part is important. You must submit your basic prices at the start of contract. And Mr. Ross did ask me, what if you didn't? Well, if you didn't, tough luck. There is no obligation on the owners, the employer's part, to pay you for increased prices if you did not say what it cost you in the beginning. I don't think he went into outbreak of hostilities. I don't think it's likely we would end up with those and war and so on. So clause 32, treated with outbreak of hostilities. 33, war damage. I don't know if we have war damage, Minister. Do we? Yes. It appeared a couple, I think it was up to last week, Monday, that we may be having one. He speaks to antiquities also. This is if you're on the site and you find fossils. In some cases, you may actually unearth graves, which I've experienced, and you're supposed to, there's a process through which that is supposed to take you. Certainly you have to notify everybody. You have to bring in the various government authorities that speaks to those, the handling of those, the removal and the reburying of those. But there might be other fossils that you may come upon which you have to bring to the attention of the authorities. I know we have found those cannons we have found cannons on site, and we are supposed to bring those to their attention. Yeah. Notices, clause 35. Notices are to be written and addressed as set out in the contract document. The articles of agreement tells you who to notify, when to notify, and so on. Of course, it is good practice to notify immediately. The appointment of an adjudicator, a practice has developed recently, this wasn't so all the time, where the parties agree at contract signing to an adjudicator, or if it's a multi-billion, they may agree to 3 adjudicators or something like that at the start. And these are people you refer potential disputes to during the execution of the contract. It doesn't come at the end. So as soon as the contractor thinks that he's being mismanaged, mishandled, mistreated, he calls in on the adjudicator, submits a claim, and asks for the adjudication to be done during the execution of the contract. And normally the adjudicator has to produce a decision within 28 days so that it doesn't affect the timing or the timely execution of the works. Arbitration, of course, this comes usually at the end. It means that the people are in a dispute which they cannot resolve among themselves. And so they would invoke and invite the participation of external bodies with which to do so. In the main, we have been practicing with a single arbitrator, but you could have a tripartite arbitration where you have three arbitrators acting and the majority decisions would be handed down. Thereafter, there is an appendix at the end of the document that he treats with. And I also want to bring attention, because he did, to what he calls general observations. And I would just want to read that for you. It's fairly lengthy, so I don't want to take you through all of it, but he speaks to the architect and the power in which is invested in the architect, and that it is a quasi, I recall when I read it, quasi-judicial authority that he has, because he makes decision on work that you have done, and most importantly, the payments that are made to you, and so it is very important. He goes on to point out that the architect, however, is obliged to act fairly, because he's given this authority. He's supposed to act. And here I pause and smile, because the architect is employed by the employer, and he is looking to get additional employment. And with that, we have had issues over the years, because the architect, in a lot of cases, has acted in favor of the employers. But I know Mr. Ross has included this here. Mr. Ross himself has provided services on arbitrations, and therefore this is an item that he regards as very important. And in fact, has resulted in a number of cases where the benefit has gone to the contractor because the architect did not maintain his independence in practicing the outcomes of dispute. He goes on at the end with a special note, duty to cooperate. This particular background to construction contracts gives unusual practical importance to two correlative and generalized implied terms. One, sometimes called the prevention principle, is to the effect that neither party shall do anything to hinder the other party from performing the contract. The other is an implied positive obligation to do anything which may be necessary to enable the other party to perform his obligation. There is an implied contract by each party that he will not do anything to prevent, this is a quote, the other party from performing a contract or to delay him in performing it. I agree that generally such a term is by law imported into every contract. You know, what he's saying, even if it is not stated, it is implied. This principle is sometimes referred to by saying that a party cannot take advantage of his own wrong in enforcing a contract. It is a principle very well established at common law that no person can take advantage of the non-fulfillment of a condition, the performance of which has been hindered by himself. Again, so far as a positive duty is concerned, where in a written contract it appears that both parties have agreed that something should be done which cannot effectively be done unless both concur in doing it. The construction of the contract is that each agrees to do all that is necessary to be done on his part for the carrying out of that thing, though there may be no express words to that effect. Again, it is pointing out that although the contract doesn't essentially have that in writing, it's a duty on both parties to ensure that they enable both parties to undertake the contract successfully. I can think of no term that can properly be implied other than one based on the necessity for cooperation. The law can enforce cooperation only in a limited degree, to the extent that it is necessary to make the contract workable. I want you to ask, not to applaud me, but to applaud Mr. Ross in this presentation. He did so at short notice. We had sought the assistance of the Bar Association, and they were unable to produce someone. And about a week and a half ago, I pleaded with him. He said it was too short a time. He had to do the research necessary. And when you see the paper, you would have seen the type of research he did. So please, for Mr. Ross. Thank you very much.
For the second session, we are going to go into the scheduling, and it will be presented by Engineer Desmond Young. And Mr. Desmond Young is Chairman and CEO of Molodoy Development Limited, and he's a well-experienced professional, more than 25 years of experience in the industry. And I know that Mr. Young will take us through the presentation with alacrity, and I look forward to the questions at the end. Thank you.
So this presentation will start by getting the context, going back to basics, and more than anything, what I want you to understand is that this is a science. It's not trial and error. It's not because you have been building for 10 years, 20 years, 15 years. You are competing with others who treat the industry in a scientific manner. And for you to stay afloat, you will need to do that. So I'm very happy that we have so many students here, because one of the things that we need to do is clear our minds to make sure we get the concept right, the principles right, we build right, and we move forward in the way that you expect us to move. So the presentation will take us through what is a project, why projects fail. We'll spend a little time on project management, and the main thing that we'll deal with is schedule, how we develop the schedule. And if we're going to talk about schedule, then we must go into network diagrams. Won't spend much time on it because that can really get you bogged down. But why we're going to go there is for you to understand that the person on the other side will understand how to manipulate the network diagram and can create synergy with whatever schedule you submit to them. And when the time comes and you say you claiming for some extension of time, and the man go to the network diagram and tell you that, hold on man, you had a lot of slack here. You could have done this operation even within that time, so I'm not going to give you $1. And he will use scientific methods to prove that. The legal implication, I won't say much. The presentation that just finished dealt with that. We spent a little time on the performance problems, and then I have 3 questions that I will ask. I hope they have 3 presents, and I'm sure we'll be okay. So let's start. What is a project? It is more than anything else a temporary endeavor, and I use the word temporary, and this is not my definition, it's from the PIM book. It don't go on forever and ever and on and on and on and as you feel like. It must create a unique product. Why the word unique? You may want to say if I'm building 10 chairs and they're the same chair, why unique? Believe it or not, when you build the second chair, it's not the same as the first chair. The conditions would have been different. Even if you're doing it manual and it's the same man, and that day he might have a headache. Something may have gone wrong at home. And something in the process changed. So it's unique product. It also delivers a service, gives results. You can think of improvement that you create from projects. And that definition tells us that it's not just a product that is a project. Traditionally, I remember years ago we thought that project managers have to be engineers. Everybody remember that? And most of the time you hear project manager, the man is the site manager, and they automatically call him the project manager. It is now a science, it has certification, and it has particular rules and regulations that you need to follow. So, what are the characteristics? It's unique, requires the completion of a large number of interrelated tasks. That's usually the issue, or activities. Don't care how you take it. It don't make no difference which organization, even if it's a bank, they're going to tell you that they have a budget problem. So your finances will be limited, all the other resources will be limited, and it will have its own management structure. If it doesn't have its own management structure, you might be in problem from day one. Now, why do projects fail? This is a compilation of the 10 most repeated reasons why projects fail. And it was done by a project management organization in the US that they were about 50 years old. And over the last 30 years, they came up with these 10. Number 1 is scope creep. So when you have a client that comes to you tomorrow after you sign the contract and say, add this, here's a particular answer that you need to give him. Because if you do, you're digging your own grave. It has to go through a particular process. You must go and reevaluate, you must go and update, and And once it comes out of the mouth of the client, they must know that it has cost implication, time implication. So don't just jump. And in most cases, contractors think that's a good thing when the client asks you to do something and you do yes, it may come back to haunt you. Over allocated resources, same contractor or subcontractor doing too many activities. Stretch the man too thin. Just because he's good, keep him at what he's good at. Poor communication. This is very common in our Jamaican sector. Quite often, things are happening and one side of the fence don't have a clue that this is what's going to happen tomorrow. Something was done and it was not communicated down the chain, and you go on the site, you pick up the schedule and you're looking to see activity X taking place and you see something else. And then somebody tells you, oh, there was a meeting last night, or there was a meeting the day before. Bad stakeholder management. Recently we saw that with the Negril project. After all that money was spent, stakeholders shut it down. Now, I'm not pointing finger at anyone, but anyway you take it, it's stakeholder relationship management. So you either have them from day one, get them involved in the process, or before you get to that stage, you clear all of those hurdles. The quantity surveyors are in the room and they know that this one is high on their list. Unreliable estimates, sometimes we call them guesstimates. Somebody stay far and just throw a figure, and when it comes to implementation time, you realize that it can't work, and everybody starts panicking. Lack of risk management. You don't know where the dangers or the pitfalls are, so it's very difficult for you to avoid them. You can't predict, you can't outmaneuver, you can't plan effectively if you don't have effective risk management. Unsupported project culture. This is also a very dangerous one in Jamaica. Because of what I said earlier on, we assume that the site manager must mean that the man is a project manager or an engineer, and I'm not hitting my engineers, is the project manager. Quite often, there are people who are managing projects that don't have the requisite systems behind them. I've been in a situation where a senior manager of a company tells me that his secretary is the project manager for a project. I have nothing against his secretary, absolutely nothing. But something is wrong with that. Went to speak to the lady and she's using some Excel sheets to do some reports, and I showed her a Microsoft project shell and she said, what is that? That's dangerous. That's like giving a baby a ninja bike to ride. Anything can happen. The accidental project manager, them fired the man before, the other one couldn't take the pressure and run away. I am the next person, so I automatically become the project manager. That's an accident, and it's even a bigger accident waiting to happen. Lack of team planning sessions. Any project requires communication, explanation, understanding, and chemistry between the individuals. And it's usually, even if it's a small core team, the individuals that they interact with usually gets bigger. So you have to be planning and communicating effectively with them so that they understand what is it that you're doing, when you're going to do it, when there are issues, how we deal with it. Monitoring and controlling. You don't just make a schedule and just put it on a wall or put it on a desk. There's a reason why you did it. You did it so that you can track what is happening from day to day, and actually it becomes part of the contract, so there are legal implications. So you have to monitor and control. So, this slide needs no explanation. You know that we need to plan properly, we need to execute properly. You must know when we are in trouble, that's the risk management. You must know how to recover. That comes with your experience and your knowledge of project management. And the first step in crossing those hurdles is project management and proper scheduling. So what is project management? I must tell you that it is not a science. I'm sure there are a number of PMPs in the room, certified, they have their own organization, it's a large body. And incidentally, if you're going to manage any international contract, one of the first things that the funding agency will ask you for is, what's the qualification for the project manager? He's not going to ask you about the engineer and the architect because he understands that you have laws that govern those already, that they must be registered, but he's going to ask you who is the project manager. I'm not saying that it's only people with PMP can manage projects. I'm just explaining that to you. And the definition also comes from the Project Management Institute. It's the application of knowledge, skill, tools, and techniques. You see how the definition is scientific? So it's not something generalized or something you pluck out of the air. And you apply those to project activities to meet the project requirements, which is usually time, cost, and quality. And then the project management system have a number of knowledge areas that it covers throughout any project. And it looks complicated, but we usually say I scope time, cost, and quality with my HR manager to communicate risks and procurement to stakeholders. That's how we memorize it. Quite simple. But what it is saying that it covers everything from the beginning, and for the beginning is really before the project starts. Are you with me? It's not when you start construction, the project manager comes in from the beginning, even before you design, from the concept. That's where you need him, so that he steers you in the right direction. And at the end, when you're closing out, you still need him. And those knowledge areas are spread over 5 processes. And we usually just say IPEMC, initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. So what I'm saying to you is that project management covers all aspects, the entire scope of the project, and it is the main lever that will give you the quality that you require in the required time with the associates cost, as long as you keep the scope where it's supposed to be. If the scope changes, then what happens? Time is going to change, cost is going to change, and if you're not very careful, it will affect quality. Because now you'll be trying to rushing through the system, rushing through, and you might. I'm not saying that working fast means that you can't deliver good and accurate results. You can do that if you plan it properly. But if you have the jump in overnight attitude and the shoot from the hip attitude, that is very dangerous. In our business, that's dangerous. What we do requires planning, a scientific approach. So please don't be in a room with any client and allow them to nail you to the wall and force an answer out to you. Give me an answer now. Because they will forget the situation and the condition in which you gave those answers and hold you responsible. So, the main reason why I'm here is to speak about that project schedule. And what is it? It's a tool. It is a tool. More than anything else, it's a tool that does a number of things. It communicates what works need to perform. And if it communicates what work needs to perform, it's also telling you that the work that you're not supposed to perform. You get that? So therefore, if it's not on the schedule, and they come to you, you say, but it's not on the schedule. And it's a list of all the project activities and deliverables with intended starts and finish dates. So it's not just some lines that tell you some things. How do we get there? How do we develop a schedule? And this again is from the PMI institution. Those are the steps. Plan schedule management might be the only one that might not be very clear to you, but what it really means is that what is it you're going to use to produce the schedule? What are the base documents? You need the BQ, you need the drawings, you need the complete detail of the scope. You need everything that is associated with what you're delivering. When you have that, you can define the activities, then you can sequence the activities. Then you can estimate the activity resources. From that, you do the duration, and then you do the schedule. So you need to have, or have an understanding of, when somebody say, I'm going to lay 100 millimeter sewer pipe in a trench, you need to understand that a work team comprising of X number of plumbers and whoever else can do it in 10 days, 5 days. It can't be abstract. So you need to understand that relationship. The scope must be specific, you must be sure. If it is 10 meters of pipe, it is 10 meters of pipe. 15 meters of pipe have a different implication, even for the same team. Because if you're doing it at the same day, at the end of the day, the people start get tired, and then therefore there might be some factors that you as an experienced project manager will implement and say, okay, on the second day when they're laying, it will slow down, and you take that into consideration. The relationship between the activities are very important. I've seen schedule that the contractor just throw and give you as a client because he thinks that it look good and you are just going to go and accept it. And you look, you see the man is doing the slab before him do the wall. And then him tell you says a mistake is the wrong one him send you. And him send you another one that have 5 more mistakes in it. So you know something is wrong. So you must also understand the technological process, and you must have an execution plan. The work breakdown structure is very important because that's the decomposition of the project into smaller elements that are manageable so that you can connect them with relationship. You know, at what time, what start, and what finish. And I don't want to spend time on this, but basically we have 4 relationships that we connect. And to remember them, I normally start, finish, finish, and then start, start. So you have 2 finish and 2 start. So you connect the finish of one activity to the start of the other. The default is always 1, but if you require 10 days, 15 days, for example, if you want to go on top of the slab and you need to know that it has to cure or reach a particular strength before you can remove the props, then you will have to add that lag. So when somebody is looking at your schedule and realize that you missed those, they know that you don't know what you're doing because it doesn't work that way. So clients are not stupid. And the client will have your equivalent on their side. So when you give them something, and the presentation before spoke about it, they will check it, analyze it, and see what is happening. And you can connect finish to finish, start to start, and start to finish. And then you end up with a work breakdown structure that gives you different levels and different layers. I'm not going to spend time on this. I'm going to go to the objectives. I don't want to bury you too much in the science, but why would you need to have a schedule? It's a reporting tool. Depending on how advanced you are in your schedule preparation, you can get reports from it that deal with forecasts, you can deal with cash flow, resource, everything. It gives you the network diagram, which we're going to run over shortly, which seems very complicated, but the computer does it for you, quite easy. You just go there and bring it up. It's an implementation tool because it tells you what is supposed to happen or what's going to happen on each day. Now, if it tells you what is going to happen on each day, if you don't do it, the client knows that you don't do it. Everybody get that point? So when the time comes and you say that something happened and I didn't, and the man says, but you should have been doing this, it's not that, so something wrong, you won't get $1 because you're not following the schedule. You can't expect the client to pay for your inefficiency. That doesn't work. It identifies conflicts and bottlenecks between the activities, and so you can make a decision how to deal with them. It shows the constraints, realistic completion time. The better you do the schedule is the more you will have a handle on the completion time. It will become more realistic. You can control project progress. You can give updates. You can record percentage progress without doing anything. You update each task to its level of completion, and the schedule automatically tells you that the project is 65% complete. That you try to figure out if I did this and I did that, and you can do it that way. But this tells you automatically. Identification of delays, resource management. But more than anything else, the schedule becomes the baseline for disputes. And in the presentation before you heard. So this is what the client will go back to when you start to complaining about what happened on July 5th because of whatever event. And they will go back and say, but hold on July 5th, this is what you said you would do, but actually this is where you were. So you passed that already, so it didn't hold you up. You're giving me some nonsense story. So it's also the baseline for dispute variation and change management, and you can use it to control costs. And this is where it all started, quite simple, the bar chart, and everybody knows that. And we realize, as human beings, we try to make things better and better. Our aim is to improve. It was not enough, because when you had large projects, then it becomes too cumbersome and difficult to update. And it does not show you the relationship between the activities. So we decided that we need better things. Later on, Mr. Gantt developed the Gantt chart, and he did more, add more to it, made it more scientific, made it more holistic, but it was still not enough, but quite good. And then we got into what is called network diagrams, which is what most of us don't like. And I'm not going to spend much time on it, I'm going to glance over it. But this method is what is most important to you. The method that can tell you what's the worst case of time, which will be the completion time for the project, and how you get to it, and where is it. So without a computer, this is the way that you do it. With the computer, it's quite easy, and the presentation covers both. But you have two types, the CPM, which is the critical path method, and then you have the PERT, which is mainly a statistical model that gives you the most likely when the schedule should be completed. So in most cases, we use CPM. And a simple network diagram can be like that. It has only two parts. One with the darker arrow that gives you a particular time, and the other one with a lighter arrow that gives you a different time. So going through the network, there will be different times. That's a simple network. You could have 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 different parts. And if the project is that complicated, then the network diagram will be that complicated. And that's not sexy, so most of us don't like it. Too much problem. It's easier if you just do it in the computer. But I'm going back to the first principle. And again, we made a comparison between the Gantt chart, even the advanced one, and the network diagram. And basically, it is clear that the Gantt chart gives you the task duration, while the network diagram really gives you the dependency. And depending on what problem you're trying to solve, the dependency will be more important to you. It doesn't show the time overlap, but it shows parallelism. It shows which activities go in parallel to another. The slack time is recorded in the chart for the Gantt chart, but for the network diagram, it's in the boxes. What do I mean by the boxes? I'm going to skip that and go over to the two forms, activity and arrow, but mainly we deal with activity and node. When I say the boxes, that's what I'm referring to. And even when you do it in Microsoft Project and you click to the view that gives you the network diagram, they give you a box with a different shape from that, but it's the same thing. They will record the early start, early finish, late finish, and the duration of the activity. And this is how the client can go back into your schedule when you start claiming for extension of time and other things and bringing up some story, cooking up some reason to get some more money out of the client. The client can go to this, do all the analysis of the early start, early finish, late start, and come up with an actual end result of what we call a critical path analysis. And show you, I'm going to run through this, the screen is too small, that for every activity they can tell you when it would start early or late, when it would finish early or late, tell you how much float each activity has, and then tell us the way it does present to them is foolishness. So you're not going to get $1. And when you go to arbitration, they produce the same schedule, bring the network diagram, and put the matter to rest. You just waste time. So you make the schedule, you stick to it. So you go through the schedule in the primitive way, forward and backward until you complete all those elements. So that was the forward. That gives you the early. The backward gives you the late start, late finish. And I'm saying we don't need to spend time on this. What you need to understand is that you end up get a complete model, a complete matrix for every activity with all those parameters that you can do analysis to say, is the claim real or not? And part of doing that is calculating the float between them. When the float is 0, it means that the activity is on the critical part. It means that you don't have any space to play with that one. Whatever time you set in the schedule that you're going to do it, you have to do it. If you don't do it, the schedule changes. The time for completion changes. And when that happens, the project realigns itself and you get a different critical part. You need to understand that. So you need to go back and analyze and say where the critical part is now. And that's the purpose of all of that. All what you just see a while ago, which I mean the students here might be very au fait with it. That's what it does. So that's what you need to understand from that, because I'm saying the computer does it for you. But what the computer gives you is the output. You have to go into the views in Microsoft Project and then click on network diagram, and that is what the consultant on the client's team will do to your schedule. So even if you send him it in PDF, which is what you will do, he's going to ask you for the standard MS Project copy. And he saves that as the baseline. And if for one reason or the other you're reluctant and don't want to give it to him, he will recreate it because he has the same skills as you. So there's no hiding. It's transparent. It's a tool of transparency also. So the project manager can look at whatever you put in front of them and do the analysis. So the critical part is and sometimes it can be confusing, It is not the shortest path through the network. It is the path through the network that the project will be completed in the shortest time. So it might be longer than other parts. It actually is going to be the longest. But that's the shortest time you can finish the project. Now that sometimes confuses people. You got that? You got it, clear like mud. Constraints exist in any project. And if you want to be prudent to make your schedule more accurate, you capture the constraint in the schedule. I'm going to give you an example. If the client is supposed to buy something under some form of purchase agreement in the contract, so you are not buying that material, they have to sort out their procurement that you get it in time to meet that activity that you have in the schedule. Now that activity may have a technological process that requires following certain steps. So let's say it can only be done in 14 days for whatever technological reason. It means that prior to that day, in the schedule, the client would have to deliver that material to site. So if you're smart, you make sure that your schedule captures that so that it cannot come no later than. So when it comes 2 days later, you already have a natural claim for extension of time. You don't have to argue. You just go to the schedule, remind the client that you have it. It's the baseline. I was supposed to get this material 5 weeks ago. You said that you will buy it because you won't have to pay any GCT. You will get special discounts. And you also said that you will get it faster. Now that is the proof. If you just left the schedule without putting that as a constraint, then the client now has some chance to play around with you and tell you that maybe you could have done some other activity at that time or something like that. So, when we get to the computerized model, then it becomes very easy. But be careful. Garbage in, garbage out. So the first thing you want to do is follow the software, and the software is very, especially if it's Microsoft project, it's very easy to manipulate. You start by choosing the start date of the project, or if you don't know the start date, and you know when your client wants to finish, you can choose with using the finish date, and you work backwards. So, and I know most of you must be familiar with the software. At the end, it gives you all the reports that you will need. Resource graph, you can level resources, you can look at cash flow, you can look at other things. And so in the end, you go to views, you want to do progress, you go to the tracking Gantt, you can go to each activity, you can update it according to the site meeting that you just completed or according to your physical checks on site, and you get something that looks like that, which you can see because the screen is small. But what it does is allow you to track what is happening from day to day. Every day you can look, see what is happening, and you update it. You should look at the schedule daily. Anybody who looks at a schedule once per month, or once every 2 weeks, or once a week, when something is going wrong, you'll find out too late. You're supposed to check it every day. Every day. There are different types of schedule. It's the same thing with different name, different composition, and at different time of the project. You can have sub-project and multiple projects, so you have a master schedule. You can have the preliminary schedule, you can have the contract baseline schedule, which is the one that the client is going to hold on to. It's the original one with any approved change. You have the updates that you give on a monthly basis or fortnightly basis. You have the short term, and then when you're finished, you have the as-built, what exactly happened. So, legal implication, I don't need to say much because the presentation before spoke about that, but it's very important the type of contract that you have. And there's a section that will deal with that later on. You must understand your obligation under the contract. That's not what is in your head. Read the contract properly. It must be very clear what's the schedule baseline, so when there's deviation, you understand. When it comes to liquidated damages, the client will go back to the schedule and say, you are late. All of the reasons are your reasons. You need to pay me $200,000 per day, especially if it's a hotel. And even with your payment certificates, the schedule becomes important. When extension of time, this is your Bible. And if you get the extension of time, it affects the preliminaries, because if you were planning to be on the site for 10 days and you have to be 12 days, you have electricity, water, staff, everything. And in arbitration, that's one of the first things the arbitrator needs. Type of contracts will come later on, but you can have different types. You can have a design bill, you can have one that you're just a contractor. You can have one when you're like the developer. You can have partial contracts, where you are a subcontractor. It could be labor only, material only, or services. And you must understand your obligation. It was dealt with in the presentation before. And I added stakeholders there. This is new. This has now become a very sexy and new area in project management. It's called stakeholder relationship management. And anybody who ignores it can be in for trouble. In evaluation of delays, again, your responsibility, contractor responsibility, and others. Everybody understand what force majeure is? Those are the unforeseen things that you have no control over. And don't assume that if rain fall in June, you can get extension of time. Rain normally fall in June. The client can tell you that you should have taken that into consideration. But if you have a hurricane, that's a different matter. So question number 1. The amount of time that an activity may be delayed without extending the critical part is, what do we call that? Lag, grace period, free factor, or slack? Slack is the correct answer. Question number 2. Engineer Kelly, you ready to judge the winner, right? A project creates a unique product, a service, a result, an improvement, goods. Those are the 5 categories, and then the answers are 1, all of the above, A, B, and C, A, B, C, and D, A, and E. So the only one that is not correct is goods. What is goods, by the way? I don't know how you define that. So it's A, B, C, and D. And so that's the end of the presentation. If you have any questions, I'll take them.
Just want to say on behalf of the Master Builders, thank you for that technical presentation. And you did not leave your number in case persons wanted personal or private sessions, but they can see him afterwards. I think it was a good summary on scheduling. And once again, we thank you.